Welcome to another bonus edition of Upon Further Review. In this edition, we'll be talking about the Philadelphia Eagles of the Washington Redskins. You can catch this Week 16 matchup on Saturday, December 20th at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and that's going to be aired on the NFL Network. And this is Upon Further Review, and what we do is we have Madden gameplay while we go over the numbers, go over the stats for these two teams, and go over their schedules and how they got to this point, and what we think is going to happen in the game. And I play the game out in Madden, and I'm picking the Eagles, so I'm playing as the Eagles against the Redskins, and you're watching the highlights from that game. Now let's go over the numbers. So the Eagles are 9-5 heading into this game, and the Redskins are 3-11. Actually, the Redskins last year only won 3 games. They actually won 3 games in the preseason last year, and then only 3 games in the regular season last year. And this year, they're stuck on 3. They haven't been able to exceed last year's win total. And the Eagles are just 1 game back of the Cowboys for first place in the East, as they're fighting for a playoff spot. Of course, they lost last week against Dallas, but they split those 2 games against the Cowboys, so we'll see. They're going to need some help, but this is how they got to this point. They started off in Week 1 against Jacksonville. That was in Philadelphia, and they won that game. They won their first 3 games of the season, because they went to Indianapolis the next week, and they beat the Colts, and that actually put the Colts at 0-2, which was Andrew Luck's worst start of his career, his young career. Then in Week 3, the first time that the Redskins and the Eagles faced off, that was in Philadelphia, and the Eagles won that game by just 3 points. It was a tight game, and Kirk Cousins actually put up big yards in that game. He's not going to be playing this one. It's going to be RG3, of course. But in Week 4, the Eagles went to San Francisco and they lost. It was actually the Niners' first win in Levi's Stadium. The Eagles bounced back, though, with wins in Week 5 and Week 6 in Philadelphia, first against the Rams, and then against the Giants. They shut the Giants out in Week 6. Then they had their bye week in Week 7. Then in Week 8, they went to Arizona, and they lost to the Cardinals. They lost by just 4 points, and that was when the Cardinals were really hitting on all cylinders. But just 4 points was the difference in the margin of victory there. But then they went to Houston and they beat the Texans. They beat them pretty handily too, by double digits. And then in Week 10, they ended up hosting the Panthers and they just demolished them. Beat them by 24 points, 45-21. Then in Week 11, they went to Green Bay and they lost to the Packers in Lambeau Field. They lost pretty handily by 33. So they came off that big victory, then they got blown out. But then in Week 12, they came back with another big victory, winning by 19 points at home against the Titans. And then on Thanksgiving, they went against the Cowboys in Dallas. They beat the Cowboys the first time by 23 points. Then in Week 14, though, they hosted the Seahawks. The Seahawks came in, beat them by double digits. And then last week, the Cowboys came into town on Sunday Night Football, and the Cowboys walked away with the victory, 38-27. So they split the season series between the Cowboys and the Eagles. And all they have left is 2 NFC East rivalry matchups. First on the road in Washington against the Redskins. Then they're going to be going to New York to face the Giants. So they got their work cut out for them, although the Redskins and the Giants haven't been very competitive this year. Although when you're facing against division rivals, it's always a tough game. For the Redskins, they started off in Week 1 in Texas against the Texans in Houston, and they lost that game. Then they hosted the Jaguars and they beat them. But then in Week 3, they faced off against the Eagles. It was the first time these two teams faced off, and they ended up losing that game by just a field goal, by 3 points. And then that was the beginning of a 4-game losing streak, as they would lose the next 2 games at home, first to the Giants, then to the Seahawks. Then they went on the road to Arizona and they lost to the Cardinals. But then they got in the win column in Week 7. They ended up beating the Titans. That was in Philadelphia. It was a close game, or in Washington rather, was a close game. They beat them by just 2 points. And then they went to Dallas, and on Monday Night Football with Colt McCoy under center, the Redskins beat the Cowboys in overtime by a field goal. So it was a crazy game. And then in Week 9, they ended up going to Minnesota, and they lost by just 3 points. And then they had their bye week in Week 10, and they haven't won since that Dallas game back in Week 8, as they've lost 6 games in a row. That started with that loss in Minnesota. They had their bye week, as I said, and then they hosted the Bucks. The Bucks came in and beat them by 20. Then they went to San Francisco and lost by just 4 points. Then they went to Indianapolis, and the Colts blew them out the water by 22. And then they went back home, and the Rams came in and shut them out, 24-0. And then in Week 15, they went to New York, and they got beat by the Giants by double digits. So it's been a very tough season for the Redskins. And now they've also got 2 NFC East teams left on their schedule, the Eagles and the Cowboys. So the Redskins are going to have a lot to say about who wins this division, as they're going to be facing both the teams that are fighting for it with just 2 games left, and the Eagles out of first place by 1 game. So they're going to need the Cowboys, they're going to need the Redskins to beat them, but first they've got to beat the Redskins. And let's actually look inside the numbers. Let's take a look at the stats on the season for these 2 teams. And when it comes to passing proficiency, the Eagles are 7th in the NFL in passing yards, and the Redskins are 10th. So both these teams can pass the ball, and you should expect to see a lot of passing from these 2 offenses. And we look at their passing defenses, the Eagles are 28th in yards allowed, and the Redskins are 18th. So the Redskins actually do have a slight advantage when it comes to the passing game. The Eagles get more yards through the air, but the Redskins don't allow as much. Redskins actually have somewhat of an underrated defense, especially being that their record is so abysmal. But their weakness in their defense is their passing defense. I'm just saying it is a slightly better numbers than the Eagles in terms of yards through the air. So you should give the slight edge to the Redskins in that category. Let me look at the running games of these 2 teams, and the Eagles are rated 8th in the NFL in running yards per game, and the Redskins are rated 20th. And this had been a strength of the Redskins last year, but this year they're just having lots of problems on offense, especially on that front line and running the ball. But the Eagles, although they're not running the ball as good as they did last year, they've been coming on strong lately, and they're now a top 10 rushing team. They were a top 5 rushing team last year. LaShawn Shady McCoy won the rushing title a year ago. Of course, this year he is over 1,000 yards, but not quite the season he had last year. He's got 1,132 rushing yards on the season, along with 4 touchdowns. He's also, catching balls out of the backfield as well, and he has 112 yards receiving, but no receiving touchdowns. And with the Redskins, I said they don't really run the ball that well. They used to run the ball well, but they haven't been doing it this year. Alfred Morris has not yet hit the 1,000-yard mark, although he's likely to do that in this game, possibly. He's got 948 yards rushing on the season, along with 7 rushing touchdowns, and he's also has 136 yards receiving. But he's just 52 shy of 1,000, so I wouldn't be shocked to see Alfred Morris hit the 1,000-yard mark in this game, especially against an Eagles rushing defense that is rated 18th in the NFL in terms of yards per game. They allow over 100. They allow almost 114 yards, 113.9 per game. So don't be surprised to see, like I said, Alfred Morris actually get at least 52 yards. It's not like a lot, but you never know. We'll see. Of course, the Redskins, their running defense is a lot better than the Eagles. They're rated 7th against the run. And so the Eagles are going to have their work cut out for them running the ball. And that's actually a strength of the Redskins, is their run defense. Of course, a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're playing from behind and they're getting into games that are like more, you know, shootouts, more passing games, because they can put up numbers in the air from time to time, and teams tend to pass on them a lot. So then they don't allow as many rushing yards as they might otherwise. Of course, as it is in the league this year, not many teams are really running the ball that much, even though that's the key to success. But it's a passing league. But in the running game, it's actually pretty evenly matched. In terms of statistically, the Eagles' strength is their running offense versus the Redskins' running defense, which is their strength. And the Eagles' run defense is kind of weak, but so is the Redskins' running offense. It's almost a push, but I give the slight edge to Philadelphia. Then we look at points for and points against. We actually look at points scored in this year per game. The Eagles are averaging 29.7 points per game. They're fourth in the NFL. So the Eagles really don't have much problem scoring, and they can score any which way but loose, as they're scoring on offense, on defense, and special teams. They've got one of the better special teams in the league, and that actually makes up for their defense. They're getting great, field position, and they're also scoring on special teams. They're blocking punts, they're blocking field goals, they're doing all kinds of stuff. It's crazy. The Redskins, on the other hand, they struggle to put points on the board. They're 26th in the NFL. They only average 18.4 points per game. So that's 11 less points per game that they're averaging. More than 11 points less per game, almost 11 and a half. Well, 11.3, but so the Eagles shouldn't have any problem beating them by double digits. Of course, let's look at their defense. And when it comes to points allowed, these teams allow a lot of points. Neither of these teams can really stop teams from scoring. The Eagles are 22nd in the NFL, and the Redskins are 28th in the NFL in points allowed. And the Eagles are allowing 24.8 points per game. The Redskins are allowing 26.4. So it's a little bit closer there, because they're both allowing points. But the Eagles being such a high-scoring offense, they shouldn't really have too much of a problem outscoring the Redskins. And so, of course, the edge goes goes to the Eagles. So the Eagles have the edge on the ground, and they have the edge on the scoreboard. Washington might have a slight edge through the air, but that's debatable. Of course, we'll see how that all goes down, on Saturday. Now these two teams play out. Of course, the Eagles, they're playing for the playoffs. The Redskins, all they have to really play for is spoiler. We know there's a lot of turmoil and a lot of things going on with Washington, and things are kind of falling apart there. So I don't really expect to see, the Redskins necessarily put together, a game to win it. Maybe they make it interesting, because once they get out there on the field, all that off-field stuff doesn't matter anymore. They're just playing the game. And these are two division rivals who are very familiar with each other. And, RG3 does have a lot to play for in terms of he's got to make some kind of an impact here and show that he really is the guy going forward. Or else, who knows what his future might be in Washington and in the league. There's definitely big question marks there. Of course, you got question marks. That doesn't really mean you're going to win a game. And the Eagles, like I said, they're fighting for playoff life right now. They're a very explosive team. They actually run more plays than any other team in the NFL. They run a play like one play every 20 seconds or something like that. Basically, in the time it takes a team to run 2 plays, the Eagles have run 3 plays. So they're getting in a lot of extra plays. They're really high-paced, fast-paced offense. They keep things moving. And, it's tough to beat that Eagles team. Of course, teams have done it, and it depends how Sanchez plays. He's got to protect the ball. And the Eagles, are going to, they got that running game with Sean McCoy. They got to make sure to incorporate Darren Sproles. And he's going to, of course, make an impact on special teams, most likely. but they need to get them, incorporated into the offense more too. But the Redskins, they've got a pretty good defense, so they said Mark Sanchez is going to have his work cut out for him. It's not going to be any easy game by any stretch of the imagination for the Eagles or for Sanchez. They said the Redskins defense gets after the quarterback. They have the potential to get some sacks, so Sanchez will be under pressure. He's just going to have to get the ball off quick, and watch out for Redskins secondary. They said they're kind of underrated. But really the key for the Eagles is just running the ball. If they can get that running game going, then they should have success. And I believe that, if they can also get some special teams, big plays on special teams, like maybe get a special team score, a touchdown on defense, then that, will go a long way towards momentum. And it will go a long way towards them winning this game. But you see here in the simulation, we won this game pretty handily. I would not be surprised if this ends up being the score, 35-17. Seems pretty realistic to me, especially if going over the numbers. That's about, what the Eagles will score, and that's about what the Redskins will let up, and that's about the points the Redskins score. And there's your MVP for the game, your player of the game, LaShawn Shady McCoy. 100 yards. If he can get 100 yards in this game, then they should win. There's your numbers, the final score. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you think the Eagles win? Do you think the Redskins win? Who do you think is going to end up winning this NFC East division? Will the Eagles be able to pull it out, or will the Cowboys, who are a game up, remain in first place? With only 2 weeks left. It's coming down to the wire. So if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, and if you want more content such as this, subscribe, and thank you very much for listening. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and have a good weekend and enjoy all the sports.